Daredevil Born Again is releasing, so I thought I would take a look back at the original show, which initially ran for 3 seasons on Netflix. This was a brief stint of Marvel television productions with a grittier, grounded aesthetic produced by Marvel for Netflix. For the most part, these shows were slow character pieces with practical action. They felt like tangible productions that require your attention. They had pretty low budgets and hardly any CGI at all, so it'll be interesting to see the transition to Disney. Some of these shows, like Iron Fist or Defenders, are largely forgotten by the general public or skipped over entirely, but I think Daredevil was an excellent show that deserves its continuation. In the same way X-Men 97 was a treat for fans of the original, Daredevil was definitely the best of the bunch, rising to my favourite Marvel show of all time. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has countless creative characters, beings with superhuman strength or magical abilities, and what makes Daredevil stand out is exactly because he doesn't have anything superhuman. In fact, you'd be forgiven for thinking he was at a disadvantage as a blind man. However, from that disability he learns to tune into his surroundings, becoming a breathtakingly brutal vigilante. Daredevil is very much Marvel's closest character to the dark, grounded Batman we've seen lately. He's the character that comes closest to that atmosphere and aesthetic. So if you're a fan of Batman, you'll probably like Daredevil. Batman is popular for a reason. His comics are often brutal, visually dark, atmospheric. You completely sink into Gotham's wider world reading them. Daredevil achieves that similar murky atmosphere through New York City. In many ways, he is Marvel's answer to Batman. Superheroes can be seen as childish because their powers are often a vehicle for a spectacle. Essentially, their abilities fuel flashy light shows that look good on a comic page or a TV screen. You can watch the powers and enjoy the visual creativity that offers. It's not exactly cerebral. It's easy to see why it's so appealing to a general audience because there isn't a huge barrier for entry, and if done well, these can end up being fun comic book adventures. You sit back, watch, and are taken to another world for a brief time. Daredevil is more niche in that he is not the flashiest Marvel character. He doesn't have any visual powers to watch, so he skews towards a more mature, patient audience. He doesn't live on Krypton or Asgard, he is a lawyer, living in the streets of New York City. Even his day job could easily appear boring on paper. Who wants to watch a Marvel property that features legal drama instead of cool action? Well, that's not the case. In fact, it allows Daredevil to balance his screen time as New York lawyer and nighttime vigilante. Even his religious background gives Daredevil's character a certain texture, standing out amongst other heroes. The very limitations placed upon the character are what makes his story so great, and they in turn make the Daredevil TV series so refreshing. Let's just say Daredevil happened to be the exact same person, but instead of being only blinded by a chemical spill, he also gained superhuman strength. That's only one ability, it doesn't seem like much, right? But then, we wouldn't get to revel in these long-form fight sequences that are one of the show's strengths, because the fights would be over instantly. We wouldn't get to watch Daredevil beat up multiple criminals. We wouldn't get that relatability and vulnerability Daredevil offers. We sympathize when Daredevil breaks a bone or needs to recuperate. There are a lot of benefits that come with making your hero so physically limited, and it's those physical limitations that inspire Daredevil to become the best he can as a human being, through training and perseverance. Before watching Daredevil, I wasn't really drawn to the character. He seemed so ordinary. Naively, I was more interested in more popular characters, Batman and Superman. However, Daredevil's stories can be just as good. You just need to give him a chance. In fact, his comics are regarded as some of Marvel's best. They're probably just overlooked because Daredevil is niche and obscure. Comics are a niche art form, and Daredevil doesn't jump out to the general public. He's a less recognized name. However, if you do decide to read these comics and watch these less known characters, you'll realize how excellent they are and thank yourself for it. Daredevil stands out as a great Marvel hero who is distinct. His ordinary nature and legal proceedings have their own intimacy. His history looms upon his character, and his flaws drive his stories. Daredevil's origin story is a very ordinary one. It's nothing flashy, but it tells us that Matt Murdock is a hero. He puts someone else's life before his at a young age, showcasing moral strength. Daredevil essentially saves a man from a chemical spill which blinds him, giving him enhanced senses like hearing and smell. Despite this act of good, Matt isn't some perfect goody two-shoes. However, he ultimately is a selfless character who does the right thing. It's that very quality that eventually opens Karen into Daredevil's identity later. Anyway, unlike the 2003 movie, Daredevil is a great introduction to how rich the character is, quickly introducing his background in Catholicism. Religion is something I don't typically associate with Marvel or heroes really, but showing Daredevil's religious roots is an interesting aspect to the character. As he asks for forgiveness ahead of time, we realize he has been through a lot since being that young boy, and the mean streets of New York have grounded him a little. He's a little exhausted at how hard life can be now. Matt Murdock isn't a saint or a sinner, and religion is a brilliant metaphor for Daredevil's duality as a man and a hero. I think the pilot does a great job of setting up that duality, introducing his aspiring legal office and friendship with Foggy before leading up to the action as Daredevil. Though the show is very grounded, it still stands out visually. Matt's apartment has a window with different coloured panels, a nod back to his religious beliefs, and the exposed brick walls gives his flat a lot of character. Dark, exposed. It reflects Matt's struggle and the overall tone of the series. Choices like yellow streetlights seen through Matt's office just offers a streak of colour against a very neutral show. Kind of shadowy lighting you could imagine from inky black comic pages. With all the dark lighting and gloomy tone, the show gives me fond reminders of NBC's Hannibal. That show had far more artsy flair which gave it an edge, but the show still pulls it off very well. It makes it feel very unique in the pantheon of Marvel projects because so often they are light, quiptastic affairs, and though that can be fun, there's a tangible quality to realism that can be very engrossing. I can appreciate it when done well. The show is fitted to the strengths of what Daredevil brought to the comics, particularly with Frank Miller's darker take on the character. Admittedly, the show is a very slow start. We get a quick tease of action, but for the most part this pilot is going through the legal case with Karen and uncovering a larger mystery. It is absolutely lots of sitting around tables talking, and I admire that. It's not exactly wild stuff you're watching, and you would be forgiven at times for mistaking this superhero show for a legal drama. However, unlike Saul Goodman, Matt Murdock actually cares about his clients. I think the strong legal focus up front shows confidence in the story being told and the dialogue delivered. The show easily could have had us being further in Matt's career or skimp on the character journey for action, but it doesn't. For Daredevil, it's early days. We get to go on that journey with Matt Murdock. It takes a lot of faith in your audience to focus on that over action all the time, and it works really well, just making the action-packed moments really stand out. Scenes which are excellently choreographed, by the way. There's lots of highly choreographed hallway action that keeps you satiated. I never tire of how real and intense these are, employing long takes that take lots of time and effort. There's an intense brutality to every punch in the show, with hard-hitting sound effects and dynamic action. The choreographed practicality looks really impressive on screen. The legal stuff is by no means groundbreaking, but the mystery surrounding Karen being framed is pretty interesting stuff. It's a nice little hook for you to keep watching as you delve further into the criminal world. Though Foggy is reluctant to trust Karen, it's Matt who extends a hand of trust, taking her on as their first client together. Like the boy years before, Matt is generous. Karen has no money, but Matt doesn't care. He wants to help. It's what he does. From the start, Matt takes a chance in order to build up his business, but also because he wants to help. Beyond a client, Matt makes sure Karen has a place to stay and develops a relationship, the same way he's developed a strong friendship with Foggy. Karen joins the legal team, becoming a core part of the show. It's a tight-knit little trio to follow throughout. Unluckily for Matt and Foggy, their first case is no small dispute. Being framed for murder by a shady corporation is a big deal, so it feels like we hit the ground running in that department. It's good to give Matt and Foggy the seemingly insurmountable case on their first venture and watch the fallout as they uncover more. The lightest character of the show is Foggy. He's not the MCU type with quips, and admittedly he isn't very funny, but he's definitely an endearing presence in the show, especially because Matt and Karen are surrounded by tragedy. Throughout season 1, as Matt is busy as Daredevil, it's nice to see Foggy and Karen develop a friendship. The show quickly hints at romance, but that doesn't feel right to me, and I'm glad they didn't really do anything with it. We also get some shady criminal dealings that feel right out of a crime drama. I love these sketchy business dealings. They really enrich the criminal element Matt is dealing with. The dialogue is strict, even professional between them, only highlighting the organized element of our activities. Throughout the show, Kingpin's name is not spoken, but he's outlined as a figure pulling the strings of criminal acts, weaving the iconic villain into the show through simple conversation. The pilot weaves between this criminal element and Matt's legal shenanigans. When we do see Daredevil in ninja-esque action, the show holds off in his iconic suit, instead wearing all black. It's something that we build to happening right at the end of the show. However, we do get a series of flashbacks that enhances Daredevil's character history. Instead of a full-on flashback episode that would slow things to a halt, Season 1 switches back and forth from present to past, painting a wider picture of Matt's life. It's surprising Matt's so level-headed because his home life seems rather lonely. Matt's relationship with his father is an unusual one, yet he seems to cherish it. It's nothing too overwhelming, but there's enough threads going on here for you to stick with Daredevil's story. Matt's dad was a boxer who rarely won any fights, and the one time he did win, he was gunned down. That very history of violence and pain drives Matt as Daredevil. Unlike his dad, however, Matt puts his fists to good use, not just to win boxing matches, but to enact justice in New York City. Like Batman, Daredevil fights crime because of the mark it left on him as a boy, vowing to make New York safer. In Season 1, while Karen and Foggy investigate Fisk, the character Claire steps in to help. Daredevil's time with Claire is unintentionally a little comedic. She just goes along with Daredevil's activities, even though at first glance he doesn't seem sane, and the fact he keeps on trying to fight crime with heavy injuries doesn't rattle her one bit. We see that Daredevil doesn't play lightly. If lives are in danger, he will get the information he needs through intimidation tactics. By the time of episode 3, we hear the name Wilson Fisk uttered by a criminal. Shortly after saying it, he commits suicide out of fear. It tells us everything we need to know about Kingpin before even seeing him. Following the scene, we get our first look at Fisk, aka Kingpin, in the show. It's a small yet tantalizing tease, especially for comic lovers. Because Fisk is a man of industry, Daredevil's first season is a lot of business and shady deals. It's absolutely not for everyone. It's a show that takes its time with its ongoing story. Most of Fisk's dealings are dealt with by his handyman, Wesley, which only furthers the idea that Kingpin is above recognition, a shadowy figure at the top of the chain. However, Fisk himself is a presence very fitting of the show. He's an intimidating, hulking figure, but ultimately, like Matt, he's just a man. When he's not engaged in strict business, he's a lover of art, even a romantic. All these aspects culminate to create a character with depth. In Season 1, what humanizes Fisk most is ultimately his capacity for love. However, it's not selfless love by any means. He likely sees Vanessa as a prize to be won over a human being, a vehicle for his own deluded validation. However, we all relate to relationships, so it does give him some level of humanity, a desire that we all share, connection. We all relate to relationships, Matt through his friendships, and Fisk through his romantic desire. In this way, Fisk feels more developed than Matt. Matt's flirtation is clear from the very start of the series, something Foggy often jokes about, but Matt never commits to anyone given the vigilante lifestyle. On the other hand, Fisk doesn't let his life of crime and business impact love. He's selfish enough to risk the ugly nature of work creep into his love life, because it's ultimately about what he wants. However, Fisk loves deeply because he was never validated as a boy, and in many ways is still a boy at heart yearning for validation and attention. Vanessa is something Fisk never expected to happen. In fact, I don't think he expected to be loved by anyone, so he puts real importance on this growing relationship. This is why he gets so angry when embarrassed in front of Vanessa. He knows that this relationship is a very delicate one. It shows a very soulful drive to Fisk, but in many ways Vanessa acts as a weakness to his clarity. Fisk becomes a vulnerable, shy persona around Vanessa. It's enough to almost forget his true nature. However, we simply can't. In many ways, it's just an act to convince himself he isn't his father. Vanessa is a lover of art, a classy woman who is deeply calm and elegant. She's everything Fisk wishes he were, and everything he sees himself as. Perhaps with proper parenting, it's someone he might have become. Whether Vanessa actually loves him or simply bought into money is unknown, and I'm surprised the show never went down that road because I could see it really destroying Fisk emotionally. Vanessa is Fisk's only real relationship, so it's really important we invest, and I do. I cared when Vanessa was poisoned because Fisk did, because of how much history the show gave his character. I was always expecting a twist with Vanessa that never happened, because it seemed too good to be true. Though we see his softer side occasionally, Fisk is a brutal character, and we see that in his physical confrontations. Like Daredevil, Fisk holds duality. He's a lover of art, a man pained by trauma. However, he creates that very trauma in others. Unlike Matt, Fisk didn't have a mentor to guide him, and ultimately to calm his rage. You see, as a boy, Matt was mentored by Stick, a man who turned him into the Daredevil of today. Matt had a North Star to keep him on course, trained. He learned how to use violence as a tool without becoming a rageful monster. Matt retains humanity and relationships. He learns to grow past Stick as they go their separate ways. When Fisk talks about his business, he makes it sound like art, but it's anything but that. It's death. He doesn't have that same compassion that's key. The scales are tipped in the wrong direction. Smashing heads in cars' doors is pretty frightening behaviour, reminding you that Fisk is a complete sociopath through action. However, it's only after these troubling acts that we look into Fisk's past, conflicting us. Fisk's flashbacks largely explain the man he is today, driven to evil by his horrible father. Fisk's father tried to mold his son into his image and bullied his wife. His father essentially tried to mold his son into an aggressive bully. And unfortunately, that's exactly what he became. This toxic, demeaning father gave his son real and damaging trauma, memories which he can never erase. And this leads to Fisk eventually killing his father, transforming into a murderer, an act which he repeats countless times forwards. There's a scene in episode 7 or 8 where Matt asks his priest whether he believes in the devil, and the priest gives a monologue about the devil's history as a meaning. It's a great scene that shows how great Daredevil is with its dialogue, linking to the evil inherent in the show. Fisk and Matt's own duality and dark side he covers. However, instead of a simple yes or no answer, Father Lantom talks about the devil in depth, and that he thinks it exists in all of us. This religious representation is one reason the show rises to art, not just your standard superhero story. Excellent metaphorical dialogue that links to the very themes ingrained in the show. The first season is great overall, don't get me wrong, but the build-up with Fisk is definitely one of the most satisfying aspects. As soon as you start to feel sympathetic for him, he does something unforgivable that pulls you in another direction. A truly disturbed mind hungry for power and control. Wesley really propels the show as Fisk's slick right-hand man, a charismatic presence himself, so when Karen killed him, I felt sad because of how great his character was, but also happy for Karen's growth of confidence. The whole criminal network related to Fisk are all engaging to watch. They all give their own presence to the series. However, Wesley was definitely a highlight. In episode 6, halfway through the series, Daredevil and Fisk first interact. It's a great moment. They're both accustomed to each other, which gives their phone call real weight. Matt and Fisk's ideologies clearly clash, but what they do have in common is resilience. Of course, the more satisfying chapter is when Matt stands opposite to Fisk, with Fisk blind to his true identity as the meddling Daredevil. When Matt and Fisk meet face to face in episode 8 or 9, it's a moment of great suspense given the history built between the characters, the real suspense woven within the show. Yet, it's oddly calm in an art gallery. The show isn't afraid to take its time, and the finale wisely waits to show Daredevil finally getting his iconic suit, ready to put an end to Fisk's tyranny. This is where Fisk and Daredevil truly transition into hero and villain, Matt as the protector and Fisk as the ill intent. As Fisk himself states, it's a moment that the show fully earns. Fisk walked into the SWAT van and it was Kingpin who stepped right out. Whereas Matt funnels his anger and religion into tools for good, Kingpin uses soul anger to control and dominate New York. It's a truly satisfying moment to see Fisk beaten and justice restored after much struggle, an endpoint the show doesn't make light of. Death and pain led to Fisk behind bars, separated from Vanessa. Fisk ultimately has plenty of blood in his hands, and he pays for it. If you would like to support the channel, please consider supporting Patreon. Links are in the description below. I would like to give a special thank you to Starfleet Sohail, who supports me on Patreon. You can find him at Starfleet Sohail on YouTube and Twitter. But most importantly, thank you for watching. It really means a lot.